Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back into the miniatures tonight for black. One of your favorite openings, one of the most solid ones with the black pieces, Caro Kann. So let's immediately begin with a game. E4, C6, D4, and D5. First of all, I have to tell you who played a game. Yevsev against Floor. And who could even say that in the quite boring opening such as Caro Kann, you can make a miniature? Well, take a look at this game. It's a great example of how black with a proper normal play and pretty normal moves can easily come up with some very nice attack. And on top of all that, in this game you're going to learn like a full importance of deflection. So let's go. White in this game played knight c3, definitely the most popular move. D takes c4, knight takes c4, and now in theory there are like three moves. Knight d7, whose main representative was Anatoly Karpov, and he had a great results with it. The idea is to go, just like in Rubinstein variation of the French, you just want to go with the knight f6 next and not to spoil your structure. Nowadays more and more popular knight f6, where you have Bent Larsen's line with g takes f6. I owe you a lecture on this one because it could be a very interesting topic from black's perspective. And e takes f6, nowadays almost everyone just goes with this with some modern h5 at some point. And finally, there is a classic bishop f5, the most common move in the practice, but that's not a topic of this miniature video. I'm just showing you what happened in this game where black played knight d7. White played not the most ambitious move, knight f3. It's a normal move, developing one, and for example, for all of you who play chess on lower and medium level, you can expect by most of your opponents knight f3. Those who play on a pretty good level and want to check this video, you just guys have to be ready to face knight g5 because, for example, just out of curiosity, you gotta play knight g and f6 because in case of h6, there is a famous, very annoying knight e6 move where in the best case scenario, you just lose this bishop. In the worst case scenario, if you're greedy, you're gonna get mated. So after knight f3, which happened in this game, knight g and f6, once again, white has two options. Pretty solid and pretty normal approach with the bishop d3, or knight takes f6. That's exactly the point of an early fourth move, knight d7. So once black goes for knight f6, he's going to be able to recapture by knight and play fairly normal position. White went for the knight g3, and black played e6. The main idea of e6 is to create a hyper solid pawn structure to open up the dark square bishop on e7 and to break in the center with c5. When white played bishop d3, and the bishop really belongs there because assuming that black wants to make short castle, the light square bishop should do the best in this diagonal. Although after bishop d3, black played inaccuracy. That's his only, let's call it, mistake out of the opening and actually incomplete game. It's a little bit passive. He was supposed to react immediately with c5, and the point of c5 is when they take on c5, you just recapture by bishop. You just recapture by bishop, and then you want to play short castle, queen c7, and b6 followed by bishop b7. That's how he solves the problem of the light square bishop. This is the main problem of the French, and sometimes in Caro Kann it might be a problem, but usually not. So after bishop d3, bishop e7, short castle, queen e2, white just continues to play normally, and black finally breaks with c5. White plays very solid c3, plays b6 because he just wants to develop his only undeveloped piece, and that's the light square bishop. Here, in my opinion, white went to a little bit more aggressive on black's position and made first inaccurate move. He was supposed to play bishop g5, bishop f4, rook d1, rook e1, d takes c5, because I usually teach students in this type of positions, never let them take on d4, because then you'd be forced to take by knight. And why would you lose tempo? You should rather take on c5 yourself. If knight takes, bishop goes back on c2. If bishop takes, you earn tempo. Now you understand why did I tell you previously that he was supposed to play c5 first. This guy went for knight e5, and obviously he threatens knight c6. That was his superficial understanding of this position. And when black played bishop b7, he now decided to go all in and made a serious positional mistake that costed him game. He played f4. That's why I'm telling you, he was supposed to take on c5, to play bishop e3 to hold these healthy pawns in case of c takes, bishop takes, to take on d7, to do anything, but not to play f4. f4 was a huge positional mistake. He left d4 pawn unprotected. When I say unprotected, it's protected by the c3 pawn, but in that case, you just create an isolated pawn, and that's what costed him a game here. And one more thing, he just wants to go with f5. Looks reasonable, but in some other circumstances, for example, if the dark square bishop was on e3 and c takes d4, could always be met by bishop takes d4. After c takes, that's a golden rule in these positions, especially characteristic for Caro Kann. If you have a chance to take on d4 and create an isolated pawn, you should never miss it. And here, actually, that led white into other difficulties and problems in the game. After c takes d4, now black decided to take on e5 and to take advantage of the pawn on d4 that was hanging in this case. He now had to take by that pawn in order to prevent queen takes d4. And now black went for a very nice move. From this point onwards, black's game was beautiful, and he ended this game in 10 moves, just under 25 moves in order to call it miniature. So how did he play? Take a look at this. First, he played knight g4. A reasonable move. If white takes on g4, he would take on d4, and he would, with one stone, to kill two birds. He would win the bishop pair, and he would definitely get like a huge advantage in development, get both of these bishops pretty strong because they're open, especially the light square bishop. And also, black has lots of difficulties to carry on with the attack because bishop c5 followed by some, I don't know, rook c8, rook c2, there is a threat like this. I see some other threats. This is terrible game for white. But white was greedy, and he said, okay, if I can't take my knight, because you're going to take my bishop, I'm first going to take on h7. Sorry, I have to apologize. I'm coughing because I got sick in Bermuda party. We were drinking and partying so much. So after bishop h7, he sacrifices a bishop, wins a pawn, spoils a castle, kind of forces this king to go a little bit more closer to the center. And then he took on g4 and he was up a pawn. But just like I told you, he was greedy in this approach because not always material gain can be beneficial. This game is a true example of that. So after queen d4 check, king h1, black now certainly had a fantastic compensation because of the bishop pair, because of well-centralized king, because of a really beautifully placed light square bishop on b7 and the diagonal a8, h1. And finally, because of the fact that he can always fight against the g2 weakness and consequently king on h1, thanks to the rook, and thanks to the open back rank, and thanks to the weak second square. So basically, rook c8 followed by rook c2. I like this move. It threatens rook c2, followed by lots of nasty things in the game, and white went for knight h5. White went for knight h5, threatening mate in 1. Take a look at this one. g6 and queen h3. This is a moment where most of you could make a mistake and say, okay, I'm black. He's up a pawn. I should be happy to take on h5 and to get this game into calm waters, making a draw, so that's it. Well, it's not always like that, and you just have to be on the top of your task, defensive task. So what happened in this game? Here, black has to find a great defensive resource, but at the same time, it's gonna be a great offensive resource. So stop this video for a moment, take like 3 to 5 minutes, and ask yourself, what would you play with the black pieces? This way, you just practice both. Defense, how do you tend to panic in these kinds of situations? And are you able to find like a good defensive resources, or are you resourceful enough in your games? After like queen h3, that beautiful move is rook e8. Whoever found it, congratulations guys, and by the end of 2037 you're gonna be a good player. So after rook h8, white just goes with, look at this, he threatens king g8. What a nice move. And you don't care about the knight, in which case he would have a perpetual check. No, you're just fighting for more. So after knight f6 check, king g7. And now you see a true benefit of the rook on h8, queen on d4, bishop on b7, and the possibility to go with a rook on the second rank. Here, an option was, he played queen e3. An option was queen to b3, because queen was hanging. In that case, rook h4 followed by rook c on aj, doubling the rooks, bishop e3, doubling rooks. What a nice trick. If you take the queen, check, and this would be checkmate with bishop and two rooks. Nice mating pattern. If bishop g1, I believe that's especially a good thing, because after queen d2, threatening mate in 1, queen g3, he's absolutely tied up. g2, g1, h2, h1, everything is basically hanging, and white can immediately resign because he can't stop mate in many of these variations, and in most of these lines, at least, serious material loss. So in the game was queen e3, and black went for rook c2. What a nice trick. He sacrifices a queen, and that's what makes this miniature so beautiful, because if white takes the queen, believe it or not, he would take by rook, it would be defended by this bishop, and on top of all that, he can't stop rook h2 checkmate. A beautiful, beautiful trick. If somebody asks himself, what if this? Then this mate. So basically, white in this position couldn't take on d4. He just played queen to g3. Now, when you see that your opponents in your games make a move like this, then you just know that he's just trying to desperately defend himself. Of course, that most of us would take on g2 in a blitz game. But we shouldn't be greedy. We should always look for the best moves. And the best move in this game was power of deflection. Queen to d3. If you take, then I'll do the same, buddy. And that's exactly what happened in the game. He went for rook to g2, threatening rook h2. And when the guy played knight g4, hoping for the last trick, if you take by rook to go here, he just went with rook g on h2. Oops. I apologize. Rook g on h2. And after king g1, he came up and delivered this checkmate, rook g2. Beautiful game. Have floor, 1949. Miniature in Caro Kann. Who would say that the Caro Kann could be such an interesting opening? Hope you enjoyed, and subscribe on the channel and sometimes donate. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.